Kendra here again from Circle J. Today we're going to finish our talk about harnessing the miniature horse. Before we pick up where we left off last time, there was a couple things that I just wanted to cover that as I was editing the last video I realized I hadn't really touched on. First is positioning the bit as you're fitting the bridle. So traditional wisdom tells us that we are supposed to make a wrinkle and a half at the corner of your horse's mouth. But that rule actually comes from people who were from cavalry training. And they were training all these soldiers at once, and so they needed to be able to have a standardized rule to teach them all, to make sure that nobody's horse had a bit falling out of its mouth or anything like that. So that was the standard test that they could check at inspection and make sure that every horse had a wrinkle and a half at the corner of their mouth. These days we're luckily not doing industrial level horsemanship, so we can treat every horse as the individual that they are. And what you can do is peek in the side of your horse's mouth and check where your horse's bar is. It'll give you some idea of where the bit needs to sit. The bar is the gap in your horse's teeth. They have a toothless space in there, and that's where the bit sits, conveniently enough. It's different for every horse. And every horse has preferences. That's why there's so many bits in the world, is because every horse has a different mouth and a different preference when it comes to bits. Rocky here has been a challenge to bit comfortably. He really likes to put his tongue over the bit. And so I switched him to a mullen sooner than most horses. I usually start them in a French link, and then when they're ready for contact, switch them to the mullen. What he does now, though, is he tells me really quickly if anything's not right. If I've switched his bridle to a different bridle and it's not fitted quite right for him, putting his tongue over the bit is his way of saying something isn't quite right. He prefers that it's just slightly loose. Not so loose that it's clanging on his teeth, but a little loose because, and I think this isn't uncommon, I think lots of horses like to have that ability to pick the bit up and carry it where they're comfortable. So you want to have it, you're supporting it for them, but you're not pulling it tight in their mouth. Again, every horse is different, so play with it a little bit. Start with the guideline that I've been saying for everything, which is snug, not tight, and see how it goes. Just something you can play with. Generally, when they do put their tongue over the bit, it is their way of saying, they only have so many methods of communication with you, so it's them saying, I'm not comfortable with something. And so you can usually track down what it is. If you don't take the time to track down the first time it happens, then it might turn into a habit, and then you'll have a bigger problem on your hands. At one of my clinics this summer, there was a driving horse that put his tongue over the bit, and he'd been driving for, I don't know, at least a decade, and he'd never done it before. They adjusted his bridle, figured out where the issue was that he was trying to say, hey, something's not right, and he never did it again. So if they do, it's not an indication necessarily that you need to change bits. It's mostly something's not right, try to help them out. Alright, the other thing I want to talk about was, we mentioned how hairy this horse is at this time of year. When we're talking about miniature horses specifically, that hair needs to be a consideration when we're fitting our harness. Obviously, if you are driving your horse all summer long, you hook them up again 3 months later to go for a sleigh ride, you're going to need to refit that harness because that hair makes a big difference. Alternatively, if you're clipping the horse for the first show of the season, even if they already had an early clip or have shed out quite a bit, drive them one more time before you get in the show ring and refit that harness, because even when it doesn't seem like a lot of hair, it does make a difference. And the last thing you want is with everything else that you're throwing at them at a show and asking them to perform their best, you really don't want a poorly fit harness to screw it up for you. So it's just worth mentioning to always refit anytime there's been a change in the hair coat, because the hair is significant. Alright, so we're going to start putting him to the carriage here. The cart we're going to use here is a Gerald show cart. Just a basic Gerald open wheel. It's pretty common if you're driving in the show ring, kind of the Cadillac of show carts, and they are sturdy. So this one we bought secondhand about 20 years ago, at least. I've used it combined driving marathons. I take the basket off for a marathon, I put it on for dressage. It's got a little wear and tear, but the basic structure of the cart is absolutely as sound as it was the day we bought it. So they're very, very good carts, very versatile. I really like them. what we're going to do here is going to be really similar to any two-wheeled cart that you're going to hook up to. So don't think just because you have an easy entry cart it's going to be different. It's not. Anything with two wheels, two shafts is going to be very, very similar. Before we start hooking it up to him, what we do need to do is talk about the balance of the cart. Now this is something that you can do with your cart at home, and I recommend you do. To get a friend, go out to the barn, and I want you to hold the cart, and you want your friend to get in. Remember, when they get in, the shafts are going to go up. Don't drop your friend on their head. They won't thank you for that. But really feel where the balance is on your cart. Hopefully, when someone's in the cart, you want it to be where you just have the teeniest weight in your fingers. That's where your shafts go when they're on your horse. If that's not the case, you need to either somehow adjust the balance on your cart, which with carts like this isn't very easy to do, or you need a different cart or a different horse. so just be aware, play with it and see. Hopefully, when there's a person in the cart, there is just the tiniest bit of weight on your horse's back. We want a little bit of weight because it stabilizes everything. Those shafts are absolutely floaty. That's when you get that wha-bam thing that I was talking about last video. One of the things that I've seen some of my students doing, and I really like, and I'm going to adopt it for myself, is they say cart to the horse when they're bringing the cart up to them, so that they know the horse can't see you, right? He's got his blinkers on. So we want to make sure that he knows, hey, I'm coming up with a cart, so that he's never afraid of the cart. Now, when I'm starting a horse in harness, when they're really green, they have an open bridle on, which is no blinkers, so that they can see the cart and they really understand what's going on. So that the next time that I say cart, they can't see it and they're like, oh, okay, I know what's going on, it's not a big deal. If you're interested more in how, this is going to be a shameless plug here, if you're interested more in how I start a horse in harness and the stages that I go through, I'm doing a workshop in March, the whole month of March, 4 webinars, question and answer, so you can check out the website for more information on that if you're interested. So we're going to say cart rock, and we're going to bring it up, and we're going to put it through the tugs. Now this is the advantage of a miniature horse. If you're driving a warm blood, you couldn't reach over and put that on the side as well. Okay, so that's the first thing we do, is we put the shafts through the tugs on both sides. So we want to make sure, a good guideline, again, the rules of how high your shafts are is based on the balance of your cart. But we're talking about a show cart like this one, they're pretty similar. We want it, and it's the right size for your horse. So an A-size cart with an A-size horse. You're going to have the shafts will be either level or a tiny bit above level. You don't want them going downhill, because then all the weight of the cart is going on your horse's back. You want them to have as little, they shouldn't be carrying any weight, they should just be pushing it with their breast collar. The first thing that I do up when we're talking about safety, now I do have him tied here. When I'm hooking him up to actually drive him and I'm hooking up out in the field, I don't have him tied. You can, if you've got, if that's how it works best for you, you use one of these halters that buckles over top or stays on underneath their halter. There's even cavesons with a ring on the bottom that you can tie to, so the horse can be tied while you're hooking up to the cart. But you also want to make sure, like I say, that the bridle is on, the reins are through the turrets. The reins are in your hand is what I do. I've got them bundled here, but when I'm hooking up out there, I've got them in my hand, and he is standing. He's just standing, because I had a horse, my old horse Image. He doesn't stand. He is very, very bad, because the person that started him in harness was a teenage girl who loved him way too much. Spoiler alert, it was me, and let him get away with murder. So now my horses that I start, they darn well stand, because it not only, at best, it's annoying when they don't stand to hook and let you get in the cart. At worst, it's dangerous. So they do learn, until they are willing to stand quietly while I hook them up, they don't drive, because I think it's that important. So the first thing that I hook up when we're talking about safety, in my mind, the best thing to do is to put the traces on first, because then the cart is with him. I'm going to put this one on, and then I will get the camera closer to put on the other one so that you can see up close where I run the trace and how it works. So hopefully this is a good angle for you to see at. What we're going to do is we're going to take the trace. We're going to make sure it's not trapping the rein, but we will double check that later. We're going to go under the tug and through both of the leather loops on the shaft. Now, if you don't have leather loops on your shafts, not the end of the world. I'm going to show you how we can control that trace a little bit more as we hook up the wrap straps and the breeching as well. Now, as we're putting on the breast collar, you can see that the trace goes on to the single tree back here. Now, the single tree is a piece of wood that, well, it moves back and forth like this. The reason that it moves is because then every time your horse takes a step, you'll be able to, it'll move, it won't, instead of the breast collar rubbing on the horse's chest, you'll be using it, the single tree will move with each step so that he'll be able to pull that carriage without interrupting his movement, with nice free movement without getting rubs on his chest. So if you're driving a cart, now I know some carts don't have a single tree on them. They just have hooks on the easy entry cart. Oh, Rock. Oh, he just wanted you to see better, see? So the single tree moves like this. If it doesn't move, if you have one that doesn't have a single tree that moves with every step of your horse that your horse takes, you might want to look into it because you just need to be really aware of rubs. It's not going to be nearly as easy or comfortable for your horse to move the carriage. All right, the next thing that I hook up is the wrap straps. The reason we did the traces first was so that the cart's now with him, pretty much. When we spoke the other day about tugs and deciding whether or not to use open tugs, the reason that we can't use open tugs without breeching is because without the wrap strap done up, pretending this is an open tug, it's okay, Rock. There's snow falling off the roof and it's Rocky's kryptonite, he hates it. If this was an open tug, this could slide forward, potentially off the end of the shaft, and drop. The shaft would drop, which I think would have a really detrimental effect on the driver, catapult action. So we would have to use breeching. Now with our wrap straps, what we're gonna do, now this is the way I do them, it's pretty much standard, but there can be some variation. We want to make sure that it's held in place this way, forward, backward, and that it's going to hold the shafts down. So when you get in the cart, they don't go flying up in the air, so that every time you don't go over a bump, it's not going to give them that wha-bam movement. When I finish my wrap and buckle, it's behind the tug. Again, that's just to make sure that this buckle also doesn't bind at his elbow and get in his way. So the other thing that we're going to do with our wrap straps, I talked about controlling the trace a little bit more. So what we're going to do is the first wrap, we're going to come up behind that trace. We're going to wrap in front first. And now we're just going around the shaft. So after this, we're going to ignore that trace, except for that first time that we came in between the trace and the horse to come up. We're going to wrap in front and then wrap over top to the back. We're going to wrap in back. And now if we had lots of extra, we could wrap again. But I think this will do for today. And then on our last wrap, wherever our last wrap is, we're going to tuck it under the wrap before. So that it's going to trap that a little bit. That way, it's a bit of a safety. If something happened and this strap broke down here, hopefully, by trapping it like this, it's going to hold it in place well enough that we're going to be able to get the horse safely stopped. And then we're going to buckle it down. All right, I will undo this from the other direction here so that you can look at it from that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to our wrap strap is down here. We're going to come up behind the trace, between him and the trace, see? Then we're going to wrap once in front, go over top the tug, wrap once behind, or twice if that's, you know, if you have more wrap strap than you need. Then we're going to tuck under on our last strap and buckle down. Now I will go and wrap the other side, and then we can talk about how to make it make sure that it's done correctly at the right tightness. Hang on. What this has done is it has made a nice little V shape here. And this is where the trace can go through. So now, if something happened to your loops or something, you've still got this to contain it. So you want to wrap it, not trap it. So it can still move comfortably with that movement of the single tree, but it isn't completely flopping on its own or binding anywhere. It's got a nice safe place to live. Now, if we're talking about We've done both sides of this now. We want to make sure that it's just snug enough to keep those shafts from having too much play. So if we were to lift up on these shafts, yeah, just an inch or two is all he should have, not even. So we can hardly move those up and down, but they're not so tight that they're squeezing his belly. One more thing we want to check for when we're talking about wrap straps. Now that we've got our wrap straps done correctly so that the shafts don't bounce, our belly band is now looser. You see, I can get a whole hand through here. Maybe you can't see. I can get a whole hand through here. We want to make sure that the belly band is the same tightness as the wrap straps, because otherwise, if the belly band's looser than the wrap straps, you're going to get pinching because the overgirth and the girth will split apart and you'll be able to squeeze in between here, especially horses with long furry winter coats on. So I just tightened the belly band a little bit so now it's snug, but no more snug than the wrap straps. Everything seems to be in good shape. Let's move on to breeching. When we do our hold backs, we're going to start by going from the horse out through that footman's loop. And we're going underneath the trace at this point. Next, we're going to wrap just the shaft, not the trace. We're going to wrap twice probably. In this case, I think we're only going to be able to wrap once, but we'll do it twice to show you how. We wrap the shaft twice in front of the footman's loop. Then we're going to tuck under, just like we did on the wrap straps. For a little bit more security, tuck under the first strap you do and go right over top everything and buckle back to the breeching, or to the breeching itself. Now, we've made another little V-shaped pocket for our traces here to slide through. So then if they came loose at the back and you were using an easy entry cart without any loops, they would be caught in here before they got under their horse's feet. It'd still be a bad situation. It also keeps it from falling down and getting a leg over. So it's a good idea to keep your traces through that little pocket on the breeching. All right, let me just show you the breeching one more time. So we're going to take the hold back. We're going to run it underneath the trace and go through that footman's loop from the horse out. Then we're going to wrap in front of the footman's loop once, twice, or 50, however many times that you need to to use up the length of the footman or the hold back so that you can have it the right length. We're going to go back under your first strap as an insurance, a safety, and then we're going to buckle over top everything because that's what makes this nice little V shape here to contain the trace. We do up our keeper. There it is. When he's in draft, which means he's pulling the cart by the traces, his breeching shouldn't do much of anything. It should ride there. So you can see on a big horse, they say your whole fist in. I can fit about 3 fingers in, maybe 4 if I tried a little bit. So he's in, I've pulled the cart back. So this is as far back as it goes. And you can, he's got some loose there so that it's not interfering with him every single step of the way. Now, if I were to pull the cart forward, it engages. You can see how it engages into here. So then the cart's not going to run up on him, and he's going to be able to sit on that breeching to stop it on a downhill. He's going to be able to sit on that breeching to back it up easily, and he's going to be a happy horse. All right, so here we are. We've got our breeching done up, our wrap straps done up, our traces done up, our reins are in the turrets and into the cart. We've got a whip. Our horse is ready to go for a drive. But before we do that, Rock says we're ready, let's go. Before we do that, we're going to do a check. And this is a really good idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to check his bit and his bridle on both sides. Make sure that the rein isn't twisted. Make sure that it's not under the traces and it goes directly straight back to the cart on both sides. We're going to check the wrap straps on both sides. Make sure that they are buckled. The tails are in, everything looks good. Again, they're not wrapping anything under that they shouldn't be, and that those shafts don't bounce very much at all. We want everything secure. Snug but not tight. We want to check the breeching. Make sure that the breeching is done up. Oh, look at this, I missed a keeper. We'll do that keeper up. We'll check to make sure we've got 4 fingers in there. When he's in draft, the cart as far back as it can go. We want the tugs to go basically straight down. He's a little bit crooked in the cart right now, but they do. Put your bum over here. There we go. When he's straight, the tugs go straight down, which means that they're not going to be pulling from the tugs. We don't want that. We've got our whip. Next, we're going to get our helmet so that we can have an extra safe drive. We're going to have lots of fun because our horse is harnessed comfortably and effectively. I hope you have lots of fun driving your miniature horse, and I really hope that this little video has been helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to learn more, please check out our website at circlejminiatures.com. Thanks! It's well enough that we're going to be able to get the horse safely stopped, and then we're going to buckle it down. Rocky.